I'm Dahlia.
And welcome to Navigate the Now,
Welcome back, y'all. Episode 3.
episode 3. And today we're going to be breaking down the proposal that came out this past week with the $5,000 proposed bonus to women having babies.
A joke. An
And
absolute
yeah,
joke.
yeah. And Dahlia and I, the dinks that we are in our late
We-
in our late 30s, childless, we are going to be giving some of our thoughts as well as breaking down some of the policies. And
yeah.
if we really want people to start having kids, what we should be doing, but also
Yeah. Exactly. Sprinkle in our thoughts. And of course, we're going to be coming at you with reports, with stats. We're giving our
mhm,
opinions, but,
mhm.
always rooted in the facts, right?
That's
Always rooted
right.
in the
That's
facts.
right. Yeah, breaking it down from a place of statistics.
Hmm.
Uh, all right. And so we want to start out every episode with our community agreements. And these are our current community agreements. Number one, speaking in draft. Number two, assuming that everyone is doing their best. Number three, not here to be right, but get it right. Four, be present and active in listening. Five, be mindful of speaking space and how much time we're taking up. Six, this is a space to learn and grow. Seven, the most important is that we have fun in the midst of all this. And we did say last week we agreed that Cheeto Man was okay, and then Dahlia, you texted me and said maybe we shouldn't say Cheeto Man anymore. Maybe that's kind of going against our own principles. So agreed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I did say
We
that.
won't we won't say Cheeto Man anymore, but he who shall not be named.
He who
They
shall
who
not be
shall
named.
they who shall
They
not be named.
I like it. I like where we're going
Yeah.
with this. All right.
Uh so Dahlia, what's going on this week then?
Yeah. So this past week, Allie, you and I we touched base trying to think about what we're going to discuss in our episode 3, and something
Mm-hmm.
that, um, for reference, today that we're recording. It is Sunday, April 27th, 2025. News is constantly changing, so by the time this comes out, I don't know, something have changed. But the one thing that I know that's not going to change are the receipts that we're going to drop. That's what the kids say.
Yeah.
I think that's what the kids say, are the receipts.
Yes. Yes. The
Um,
receipts.
so this past week, we hear, you know, the current administration talking about their grand plans and how they want um, they want a baby boom, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Pronatalism.
pro pronatalism. I've never really
Yeah.
heard of that term. Is it a new
It's
term, or is
or
it just
oh, they call it the natalist movement, and then you're like
natalist?
pronatalist. I guess not pronatalist. It seems like a weird thing to say, but um,
And that's
yeah.
essentially just saying we want more babies, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Want more babies in this country.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ask not what you can do for your country or what you can. Oh shit.
Ask
Ask
not
not
what
what
you
your
can do.
country for
Ask
your
how many
country.
babies you can have for your country.
Yeah. I really messed that one up, huh?
Well, and Allie and I are both in our late 30s. No kids yet. I personally, I would like a child or two, God
Mm-hmm.
willing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I did everything right. At least I did. There's no right or wrong. Let me just preface that there is no right or wrong how to live your life. And for me, my route in life, route or route. I always mess up that word. Anyways, it,
Data and data, whatever.
tomato, tomato. Okay.
Tomato,
Um,
tomato.
it it's here. I'm 38 years old with no kids, but with the desire to have kids, and also knowing very well that it is a difference. It's different from in your early 30s and your 20s of trying to get
Mm-hmm.
pregnant till now. And it's still such a stronghold in this country to feel like you're less than when you don't have kids, or maybe you're not
Yeah.
successful, and it feels such like an archaic mindset.
Yes.
Um but to
Well,
be completely honest and vulnerable, that is kind of the feeling, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Not married,
Well,
no kids.
I was gonna say, I think that it's also important to point out that there are probably regional differences in this. For example,
Oh, for sure.
we were talking about this earlier this week. You said living in New York City, getting married at 35 is like a teenage pregnancy.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say that. I have a friend, she got married in 22, and I was like, "You were basically a fetus when you got married." Like, that's child, you're
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're unborn. Yeah,
Yeah.
New York City is definitely like
Um,
that.
yeah, and even it's been interesting because I came back to where I'm from in Ohio, which is more rural. Not super rural, but more rural.
Right.
And coming from Tampa, where I don't think anybody ever asked me about it, and I never thought about it.
Mhm.
And I was a teacher for a long time, so I worked with a lot of women who had kids, and everybody was very honest. So I always saw it from that vantage point of like, man, this is a lot of work. And I think when you're in
Mhm.
education, you realize this is a lot of work. But it's so interesting to come back here and everyone, it does feel, I kind of joke that it feels like I moved to Utah when I came back to Ohio. Like I went to Costco and people had groups of children with them. And I am not used to seeing that. And I don't even think that you see that in Tampa as much. I think people maybe have often one or two kids. I'm not saying, I mean, I know people that have more than one or two kids,
Mhm.
but it's different. The public persona when you go out, or just the commonality of how many kids you see with parents is much higher here. And it's something I noticed immediately upon coming back here. So yeah, I guess I'd like to point that out, is that it can definitely depend on where you live,
Yeah.
even your pressure.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no, I agree. But
yeah,
even living in New York City,
yeah,
a lot of my girlfriends, there's a good mix of a lot of them are still single or they're married
hmm,
with no kids or married with kids. Also, what I find really refreshing is those who do have kids and they're not living like the typical like mom life, I guess. Like
yeah,
they're still doing
yeah,
their thing and it's still very much
yeah,
and I'm not in their life, I'm not in their shoes, but it's
hmm,
nice to have a different perspective on what parenthood is, right? What
yeah,
motherhood can look
yeah,
like.
yeah,
And I appreciate that about all my girlfriends that I've made here
hmm,
in New York City. So
yeah,
that is tying it back to what the administration they want. Oh, they want this baby boom, right?
hmm,
Um,
hmm. That's right.
what was it last month? He who shall not be named. I'm stealing a line from you. Pledged to be the fertilization president.
Oh yeah, oh
Um,
yeah. Yes, Mr. Fertilization.
fertilization.
We will support baby booms and we will support baby bonuses for a new baby boom. I want a baby boom.
I want a baby, and I want a booming.
Hands
Um,
opening and closing like they're using an accordion. Sorry,
I
can't help
like
it.
that.
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Fertilization. Well, and so there is this natalist movement, and that's what we want to break down and kind of talk about today. Is there's already been a natalist movement, and we also discussed this earlier this week, is the trad wife movement, the soft life movement, the kind of rejection of feminism, which is, I would say, you could kind of wrap all this up together, that we're kind of really going off of. And so what's interesting though is that within this natalist movement, there's different iterations of it. So there's kind of one side that thinks like IVF is good, people having as many kids as they can is good, that these pro-natalist people. So as you saw with Elon Musk having, I don't know, what does he have, 13 kids now with a different woman
This is
each,
wild. I didn't even
more or
realize it
less.
was IVF that he was having these kids.
Yeah, I don't think there's any, you know, yeah. And then there's the Christian conservatives, the anti-abortion Christian conservatives. They have serious misgivings about the procedure, which fertilizes a woman's egg outside of the body and often leads to the loss of human embryos. And probably they take issue with the loss of the family dynamic as much. So that's two things to consider in the way that this is playing out. Um,
So this week, they came out with multiple proposals on how to encourage women or children to. Or,
Encouraging children to have babies. Oh, actually, listen, on that note, there's actually, there's less teenage pregnancies happening. Data is showing for the first time the number of parents giving birth who are over the age of 40 has surpassed the number of teenagers giving birth. That's a good
Oh,
thing
yeah. Yeah, we
because
talked
the
about
US
this.
has been trying to lower the teen birth rates for years.
Yes. Um,
Yes, my
s
40-year-old mamas. Okay, sorry, continue.
so some main proposals that came out this week were the first that we have heard about all over the news is a $5,000 cash, quote, "baby bonus" to every American mother after delivery.
Joke.
Yeah. Mwah, and obviously there's been so many comments and reactions and reflections to why this is shite. But yeah, the first one is it's probably $30,000 to deliver a baby is what I've read, average, and that's without insurance. And with insurance, it's still, I mean, depending on your insurance, it's still going to
Mhm.
be probably somewhere around 2, 3, up to 5. I
2,000.
know some people who it's been maybe 10 depending on the kind of insurance that they've had. So $5,000. And then
And
I don't
also
know if
where
it's
they
going to
give birth. Like,
right.
it's not
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm not saying that $5,000 is chump change, but it's important to note that this isn't going to encourage people. It's not make or break money, unfortunately, with our healthcare system and the way things are designed. And then, so on top of that, insurance, and then, or another point that's been made is that childcare cost, that's maybe 1 month, again, depending on where you're going, but it's a drop in the bucket. And then someone pointed out that they had a miscarriage and that wasn't even 5,000 when they had to go to the hospital. And so you only get that money if you have the baby. It's like this carrot at the end. So all these things can go wrong and you're putting yourself and your body through serious
That's
poten-
trauma, giving birth
yeah,
is trauma
yeah.
to the body.
It's a lot of risk. And
Mhm.
so, none of that comes into play for that. None of that is helpful in terms of everything that a woman has to go through in order to deliver a baby. And then some of the other things mentioned, one proposal shared there would be a reserve of 30% of scholarships of the Fulbright program, the government backed international fellowship, for applicants who are married or have children. First of all, I see so much. As somebody in higher ed, we have watched this administration attempt to just destroy higher ed. So it doesn't make any sense to me on that end. And then something interesting I read this week was like, is this just DEI? Like, oh,
Yeah, sounds like it.
these people have kids or these people have these circumstances, so we're going to help
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
Um,
Interesting.
And then a third calls on the government to fund programs that educate women on their menstrual cycles. And of course, it's there's some woman who's pushing these natural ways, which I'm never not a fan of these natural holistic methods when they are supported by science. I don't think that they can live in a vacuum, one or the other. And
Right.
then in addition, menstrual cycle classes or just quote unquote natural women's care, which,
Natural
that's
women's
great.
care,
But
whatever that means. I mean,
yeah.
I'm all for honestly, I am all for more education around our bodies. Um, it was last year that I went to a fertility clinic, a very snazzy one in Manhattan. They got me because
Mhm.
they were serving bubbly and a charcuterie board, so your girl was there.
Oh my gosh.
I had
Wow.
it was delish, and I was getting all this knowledge,
Hey, New
and then
York.
right?
In New York. Wow. Bubbly
You
charcuterie.
can't tempt me with a good time and
Yeah.
freebies. So anyways, I remember just leaving and being like, "What? How do I not know about this, about my own body? Why
Mhm.
do I have to wait until, like, my childbearing years to learn
Mhm.
about my reproductive system?" And then
Yeah.
even that, even, like, perimenopausal and menopause, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
I am all for education for both men and women, boys
Yeah.
and girls. Like, we should know about our bodies, and it shouldn't just be because we want to reproduce. Sure, fantastic, I think that's great if that's how this natural way of
Mhm.
getting pregnant, but there's so much more that goes into it. There's a lot of hormones. I mean, a friend of mine actually, also last year, went to fertility clinic just to kind of know her options and stuff like that. Come to find out, she has PCOS, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if it wasn't
Yeah.
even for her going and doing that like extra step, which these
Mhm.
fertility clinics are not covered by insurance companies,
Right.
all right?
Right. And so when you have to pay and you're nickel and dime for everything, you're gonna get the minimum done versus when it's set up in this in society's social system, its social fabric for
Mhm.
ongoing health maintenance.
Right.
It's a
Right.
different mindset.
Knowing your reproductive system is so much more than just having a baby. It's just being
Mhm.
healthy all around.
And that's having the ability to monitor your health through your whole
Mhm.
life, which I just really, again, I just think it speaks to the lack of healthcare in this country.
Well, and then it's the lack of healthcare in this country specifically for women, and I can't remember if you mentioned it or not, but there was a proposal to cut funding for women's healthcare, research.
Yes,
The
I got it here. Uh,
Okay, go take it
they
away.
wanted to cancel one of the largest women's studies ever through the NIH, spanning 3 decades, 160,000 women, which studied cancer, hormone therapy, chronic disease, aging, osteoporosis, and more. And it was called the Women's Health Initiative. And that
Mhm.
was this week. They tried to cancel that, which is ironic, right? And then it was reinstated because there was, of course, major backlash.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
think it was just, like, 2 days ago that at least 2 days ago that I first saw a news article stating that they were taking away money and now they're going back.
yeah.
And I wanna say this is a win. This is one of those stories of taking a time
Mhm.
and stopping and being like, "Okay, I know things are really going south in many different ways with this administration, but this is a win of people pushing back and being
Yeah.
like, 'No, this is what we need.'" Um,
Yeah. It's a good reminder to keep pushing back. Do not give
right.
up. And that's one of the first people always quote, I think it's On Tyranny. I know the book, but I forget the author is what I should say. And one of the main lessons of On Tyranny that I hear reiterated a lot is when fascism is attempting to be implemented, ultimately, never preemptively give in.
Mhm.
So, keep or hold the wall as long as you can. Don't give in. Wait for another order, or if some, push it to court, do whatever you can, which is also something I read. How how can fascism be avoided? Another interesting quip I read was basically bureaucracy, red tape, which is
Mhm.
which is something we have a lot of in the United States,
Mhm.
and to kind of use that, which we saw. It's been interesting with the universities where you see Columbia and now Harvard is kind of leading the way of now not giving in, not preemptively giving in, which are these good
Go
lessons of
Harvard.
do not preemptively give into these mandates.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
just something to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so the point is, and then, oh, what else? They wanted to offer a medal of honor to women for having
That's
up to
cute.
6 children, which is just crazy. So, and part of this I did wanna mention is part of Project 2025, and which there's a tracker which you can see how much of Project 2025 has been implemented, because people, everybody thought
Mhm.
that was a joke, and that was always a talking piece, was like, "Well, that's not real." Like, "Well, bullshit." You
Mhm.
can go, I think it's called Project 2025 Tracker, and you can see, but this is something that was in that. And I have
Mhm.
here Project 2025, the policy blueprint that has forecasted much of he who shall not be named's agenda so far, discusses family issues before anything else, opening its first chapter with the promise to, quote, restore the family as the centerpiece of American life.
Okay, so Allie, explain to our listeners, for those who may not know, what is Project 2025?
So Project 2025 was I don't know the exact number, 800 page document outlining what I'm going to call the takeover, which I think they'd call as well,
Mhm.
the takeover of America under Christian right values.
Mm. Mhm.
And he who shall not be named, our current president,
Mhm.
distanced himself very strongly from it during the campaign. He would say, I don't know that. I'm not, I have nothing to
Mhm.
do with that. And denied it every time.
Mhm.
And, interestingly, I also saw anybody who was a supporter would say, "Well, that's not gonna happen, that's not gonna happen, that's not gonna happen." And, like I mentioned, it's Tim Waltz that came out and said, "You don't make a playbook if you're not gonna abide by it."
Trying to act like it wasn't real?
Yeah. And so from the right, it was this talking point that it was just the left making this up and making it a big
Mm,
deal,
mhm.
when
Mhm.
obviously that was not the case. And these are personal conversations I had, or conversations I had myself with people who weren't supporting that person. Some people I think just didn't take it seriously regardless, even if they weren't going to
Right.
vote for the current sitting president. I really think people did not take it seriously,
No,
and that was tough.
I
So,
do not think so.
Yeah. And
So going back to these
so
medals though,
yeah,
awarding women
yeah.
for having 6 plus
s- s-
children.
6 children. And it was interesting, something as I was reading about it, I also read that, Nazi Germany did this.
That's crazy
And
to think
it
about
was,
that.
yeah, there was a medal that was awarded by the Nazi Party in Hitler's pure German, or I'm sorry, in Hitler's pure German origin and good character. The medal was issued in 3 levels: first class, gold for mothers with 8 or more children; second class, silver for 6 to 7; and third class, bronze, 4 to 5, which is disturbing. However, my history teacher husband said that, Nazi Germany is not the only country to come out with this type of program.
Mhm.
Singapore did, and somebody else, I forget, he mentioned it to me. We're having a whole discussion about it. So do with it what you want with that information, but it still disturbs me. And that leads us into our next talking point of, if you want people to have children, if you want families, that we need to think about everything that we've been cutting in the last 2 months. And so, someone in education, I created this bullet list of some really fundamental things that we've done that do
Mhm.
not encourage people to have kids. And the first I have here is eliminating Head Start, for which serves over 800,000 children and pregnant women. The next is a severe cutting. This just happened this week, of CASA, which you and I know CASA is something differently in Tampa. That was a domestic
Okay.
violence group. But then there's CASA. This is a national program. Court Appointed Social Advocates for Children, or CASA, announced that they're the latest agency to be hit with federal funding cuts. CASA, a nonprofit that works with vulnerable, at-risk children, says the news came last night. This probably came out Tuesday, when the DOJ cut funding for hundreds of grantees. Without these funds, the work of CASA programs across the country will be impacted, along with more than 200,000 children involved in child abuse and neglect proceedings. And so these are some of our most vulnerable children, right? And we're cutting their access
Yeah,
to.
so much for being for family, right? So
Yeah.
you're saying one thing, but you're not supporting
Yeah.
families, moms
Yeah.
in the long run.
Yeah. I saw something. I always come back to this. It's they support women and children not as people, but as a resource. So
Mhm.
that's what I
Hmm.
think of when I read
Yeah.
these. Um, and so another one that was a big topic in the news. I know there's so much, and so that's what we're trying to do here, is kind of digest and
Yeah.
come out with some of what we feel are important points. But there was a huge, and this was on both sides of the aisle, was the eliminating of proxy voting, which really affects mothers who are breastfeeding or have children or have recently given birth, or just they're that main parent. And so they're not always there to vote. That was a big thing that just came out recently, and it was
Mhm.
approved and then it was denied. And they've just been going back and forth with it. And that went beyond both sides of the aisle. But why are we trying to eliminate proxy voting, allowing
Right.
women to vote from afar, or people? Um,
And that's like
and
a subject on its own, right? Like
yeah,
limiting voters. When you're
right.
trying to limit voters' rights, they're doing it for a reason. It's very
Hmm.
strategic, and it's who is being impacted with,
Yes.
what was it? It they called something about, which was gonna impact women, married women, actually,
The
with
SAVE
having the
Act.
same
Yes, which is
needing
going on right
your
now too. Not even
yeah.
on my list.
Not even on the list, but that's also
Yeah,
so
exactly.
taking votes away from women, so the women can't even vote for the things that they know that they need for themselves and their family.
Yeah. And people, that has been cloaked in like, well, don't you want us verifying voters? And that's a superficial understanding, in
Mhm.
that it's eliminating vote by mail and voter registration. And it's creating a huge, again, that could be a whole nother episode as well. But it's disenfranchising voters, and people don't understand that. They think we go back to these talking points of, well, don't you think this is a good idea for XY
Right.
reason? And you think we're supposed to be the leader of the free world. That's what we've called ourselves for how long? And we don't maintain that status if those are our values, or if they're not our values anymore. And we have to be honest about that.
Yeah, they're
That,
pretending to be that the families are values, but obviously,
yeah.
with how things are run, it's not.
But disenfranchising people is not what the leader of the free world does. So, I'm gonna keep going on my list here. And
Yeah.
what some other
Perfect.
harmful things that we've done, just to give you, just to provide some perspective. The Department of Justice also canceled grants for gun violence and addiction prevention. And then going back to the NIH, we talked about that woman's study, but if you're not aware, and I've mentioned this probably before, the NIH spans everything.
Mhm.
And the budget has shrunk to 27.3 billion from 48.5 billion. So essentially cut in half, restructuring, reducing their 27 institutes and centers to 8. And
Mhm.
many institutes that specialize in distinct diseases involving, for example, the heart and lungs, diabetes, the skeletal and skin conditions, cancer have had major cuts. And so that's when I'm like, what the hell are we doing cutting all this and then giving women $5,000 for having a baby?
Yeah, give 'em a
It's just
measly 5,000.
and if you're not in the know of what's going on in the higher ed world, speaking of PhD programs, a lot of PhD programs have been severely defunded, specifically in the science and research and health sector. And so I was part of this PhD cycle and I was really paying attention to it, and it was crazy on the subreddit grad admissions. People were essentially coming on and saying either they've been offered a position and it got rescinded because the funding was cut, or like Cornell, for instance, is just not having a cycle, or like a year where they invite people to come be PhD candidates. They're just not having it because the funding's not there. And so you
Mhm.
wonder, what is that doing in terms of research and limiting the progress that we make as humans, as a society?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Coming after academics.
Yeah.
Obviously, this administration is not about the stats. They're not about the receipts. They're about
They'd like
they're
you to
about
not read those
whatever
receipts.
moving themselves forward.
Throw it in the trash.
They're about the bros. I don't get it.
Um, yeah, and then they're cutting the USDA. The FDA has suspended milk quality testing, and then don't even get
You
the
said milk quality testing?
yes. What are we doing?
Oh my god.
I know. And then almost through this list, and this isn't even like a fully exhaustive list. This is just things I picked out. Is cutting the Department of Education, which, as somebody from education, if you don't know anything about IEPs and 504 plans, those were the standard that came from the National Department of Education that were on the federal level. Yes, every state has their own Department of Education, but on the federal level, they are the quote unquote standard for these IEP 504 special education plans. And it's the reason why we have it here in the United States. And so,
I want to break something down real quick for the listeners who may
yeah.
not know what an IEP is.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you
It
explain?
is a individualized education plan. I'm sorry. And so do you want me to break it down? Break it down? There's that. And then that tends to focus on academic progress.
Mhm.
And then a 504 plan is more behavioral, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So people who they might have trouble academically, but it's more a focus, or it's because of behavioral issues. So
So
those
would
are
you
the
say, like,
two.
in a nutshell, this is how teachers could really provide the students specialized care that they need?
It's the
Yeah.
only mechanism that we have. And I want to, and yeah.
I want to
Ooh,
my oldest sister, she is a teacher, and so,
yes. Hey,
these like,
Nydia.
they don't make it easy, to fill out this paperwork to receive the support that
Mhm.
these kids need, you know?
Yeah.
So, it's
Yeah.
a whole process, and now they're cutting.
Yeah, it's an already underfunded system, and yeah, it's crazy. So, but we'll give you $5,000 to have a baby. I am the president of fertilization.
Boom. Baby boom. Give me
Baby
kids.
boom. And my last bullet point I have here is the harmful abortion laws or anti-abortion laws. And just recently, the woman, and I want to make sure to say her name, Selena Marie Chandler Scott, who was arrested in Georgia after being found unconscious and having a miscarriage.
Mm,
And
that's devastating.
for me, that story alone makes me not want to have kids because I don't want that to happen to me.
Right? So, basically, you're not even protected, like, even if you're trying to have a kid, whatever happens, you have a miscarriage,
Yeah,
you don't even have the protection, you don't have even the medical rights to to even help your own body go through this
exactly.
traumatic event.
Exactly. $5,000.
and a medal, after having
That's it.
6 kids.
You have to do it 6 times?
What?
Your uterus is laying
Oh
on the floor,
my
but
goodness.
you can hang your uterus
Yeah,
up
what
with
do
the
you gotta do with a
medal.
medal?
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here with that. A medal.
Uh, and so getting back to, okay, let's think about what are the real issues at hand here? Why might people really not be having children is our focus today. Not just going into the reactive state of, oh, this is terrible news and spiraling, because it is. But let's stay grounded, let's stay rooted
Stay
in
rooted.
what the real issues might be at hand. And someone whose work I really enjoy is, and you and I have talked about, we have kind of used her as talking points all this week, is Reshma Saujani. She is the founder of Moms for Us and Girls Who Code. And she has a great book out on girls and academic performance. I will link it in the bio, but I can't think of what it is right now. I'm so sorry. Uh, but she really dives in, her and her organization, on essentially why mothers feel like they just cannot do it right now.
Mhm.
And because there's no structural support for parents, and we're the
Mhm.
only industrialized nation without parental leave. 1 in 4 women go back to work 2 weeks after giving birth. And so she's really breaking this down in terms of what are the real issues at hand and why people are not having children. So, yeah.
Yeah. People are having kids, and some of them are having kids later in life.
Yep.
Like I mentioned earlier, I would love to have 2 kids at some point. We'll see. Obviously, it has not been lost to me of geriatric
Yeah.
pregnancy now after the age of, like,
Yeah.
35,
A
right?
geriatric pregnancy,
What a
right.
term, what a term. Anyways,
Right.
I was looking at this, report, and it says that older parents having babies has become a sizable demographic, so it's becoming
Mhm.
more of a norm, more like okay, right? It's not as a taboo to have kids later in life.
Right.
Um, so it says there's a report that found between 1990 to 2023 fertility rates for birthing parents ages 35 to 39 shot up
Mhm.
71%.
Mm.
While
Wow.
while it might once been considered unsafe to have a baby in your 40s, the fertility rate among birthing parents ages 40 to 44 and 45 and older have went up a whopping 127%.
Mhm.
So
So women are waiting.
women are waiting, and having a family, that's a very personal decision.
Mhm.
So don't be throwing $5,000 in medals at us and thinking that that's going to be incentivized enough when it is
Right.
very personal.
Right.
And especially when all the things that you mentioned, Ellie, of how there isn't support and how they're cutting funding to help
Mhm.
children. Right.
Yeah. Right. We are the wealthiest nation that puts the least amount of money into childcare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And childcare costs more than childcare costs more than the average mortgage nationwide in every state.
So that
So childcare costs more than a mortgage or people's mortgages on average in every state nationwide. So
listeners, you
so
all hear that?
yeah. So
That's a lot of money.
yeah. Right. So then I'm going to use this as a great moment to think about the trad wife movement, which has really gained some steam. And there are some subcategories to that, which I would call the soft life movement, that have been pushed by women on social media.
Okay.
And a really
Stay
interesting
on.
thought to this trad wife movement, which is going back to the family nucleus, the woman staying home, taking care of the children, traditional values. Um, and so it had me thinking, is this trad wife, soft life, I don't want to work? Is this some weird mental gymnastics, reverse psychology, essentially, to the fact that there's no support? It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're fucked if we go back to work. I've seen this with people I work with. If you're the mom and you're working, your kid's sick, guess who's expected to go pick up that kid and miss a day of work? You are.
Mm-hmm.
You as the mom.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to
Right.
lose a PTO day every time your kid is sick. It's a lot. I've seen it firsthand, and working moms get put under the most pressure. And so it makes me
Absolutely.
really reevaluate this whole trad wife movement again as this weird, backhanded subconscious response
Mm-hmm.
to the fact that there is no support. Like, oh yeah, we want to stay home. We don't want to work because it sucks.
Yeah. And also what a privilege to be able to stay at home because not every, parent is gonna make enough to sustain one parent staying home and
Mhm.
covering. I mean, I
Yep.
know in my home, I both my parents had to work
Right. Yeah,
in
same.
order
But
to cover the bills.
yeah, the first part of my life, my mom wasn't there for holidays. And my dad, had a successful business as I got older. But when I was younger, both of my parents,
Yeah,
they were not there. My mom was not just like a stay-at-home mom. And yeah, and
right,
it still was
right.
a privilege, even for her to be able to. I think when I was really young, she worked part-time, and that's a huge privilege,
Mhm,
you
yeah.
know?
I definitely know
Um,
that it's not easy on mothers to go back to work. I know with my mom, even years later, and I've come out pretty good. Not gonna
yeah,
lie, I'm a
yeah,
pretty decent human being. And my mom still having guilt about not being able to be around when I was like
mm,
a child.
yeah.
Um,
Thanks,
but you do,
society.
yeah. And it's just like you do the best that you can with
Yeah,
what you have.
yeah, yeah. I was
So
gonna say, but your mom was just
let's stop
doing.
also shaming moms for
Yeah,
working.
yeah.
And stop
Oh, we
shaming
loved it.
moms
We
for
love to
putting
say stop shaming moms as a society, and then we shame the fuck out of moms.
Mhm.
I see that all the time.
Stop
Um,
shaming moms for putting their children in daycare because they need to.
right. Yeah.
Ah, Lord, baby
So,
Jesus.
and then we are gonna bring up a positive success story.
Bring it in,
There
Allie,
was
bring it in.
a story out of Park City, Utah. In January 2024, they launched a new initiative, a needs-based childcare scholarship program that was highly successful. And it was a response to critical childcare affordability challenges. Two-thirds of working parents were paid well above what's affordable, and 63% said childcare caused still job instability. So people were making enough money, but it was still causing issues for them, right? And so the answer was there was a million in city funding, and then there was a $485,000 additional investment from the county, which then turned into about 400 to 800 a month per family in savings. It supported 125 local families, 150 children, and 28 childcare providers. And this is
Amazing.
my favorite at the end. It had a 213% return of investment and
Whoa.
2.76 million in estimated avoided turnover costs because moms could maintain working or maybe part-time even. So,
I'm gonna add some
sure.
more numbers here from that. 60% of participants maintained continuous employment, 32% rejoined the workforce.
Mm,
Um, 80% of unemployed participants found new jobs within 3 months. So what
okay.
a radical idea to put money back into our families, helping them support them with their childcare, and then isn't it crazy? Then now there's the return of investment is just
Right.
like,
Right.
out of this world.
Right.
So, y'all, we can do better.
Yes.
Let's do better.
Yes.
There's states, there's cities that are.
Yes. And so in the end, what can we do? Or what can we push for? What can we fight for? What can we in our daily conversations show up and talk to people about? So the first thing is we need to offer paid parental leave, paid family leave, and we need to get away from this idea that dads should not get parental leave as well. You
We
and I
need dads in
discussed
the home.
this.
Hello.
Yeah, and then that goes with making childcare more affordable. And that's probably going to obviously involve some sort of subsidy or subsidization. Um, and then, but in establishing universal health care, this goes back to you should not be showing up to a fertility clinic at 38 figuring out that you have PCOS for the first time
Mhm,
because you
mhm.
haven't been going to the doctor.
Preach it, sister.
Mitigation and
Mhm.
harm mitigation, understanding that there are lower maternal mortality rates when we improve women's quality care, abortion access. Abortion is medical care. And and expanding fertility and maternal health programs and yeah, just providing resources, programs, and assistance for new mothers. This was a great place to consider the cultural standard in Asia that is in often a lot of countries like Korea, China, probably some other places, of postpartum pregnancy care. And it is often when women give birth in some of these other countries, they don't even go home right away. They and their baby go and they have essentially they go to a facility and they have this round the clock care supported by somebody helping them with their breastfeeding, somebody who,
That's
they're
what
getting
that's
meals.
amazing. All that support.
Yeah. Somebody providing, or they're provided meals where they receive nutrition that is optimal for them after having a baby. And I believe we read it with the 5-5-5 rule. You need to have 5 days in bed at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, and then 5 days laying, and then 5 days kind of still sitting up and on your bed. You're not really getting up and moving around. And then 5 days moving around your bed. So it's 2 full weeks of maintaining in your room this supportive care for you as a mother and as your baby. And also teaching, you're getting essentially all this education and knowledge from these women, or for their, I'm sorry, from these people, these caregivers at this facility, that this is what they do. So you're getting
Right.
really great information, and so that you can go home and take that home with you on how to care for your baby. A lot of support.
More doulas, running
Yeah,
doulas,
yeah.
birthing centers.
And
Oh.
but here in the US, literally we expect women to be walking back into work on average 2 weeks after they give birth.
And I will be remiss if I didn't mention this, especially we're talking about having babies. Okay, they're talking about having babies when maternal mortality refers to deaths due to complications from pregnancy or childbirth. Okay,
Mhm,
U.S. has one of the highest ones. Pregnancy risk assessment monitoring system hit hard by
mhm.
cuts last week.
Yeah,
Actually, I'm reading from like this article, and it came out in early
yeah.
April. But when when we're cutting back on funds on these
Mhm.
organizations that are monitoring how our mothers, how our birthing um, persons are being impacted.
Yeah, birthing
But
bodies.
how wild is that?
Yeah.
I'm going to read another stat.
Okay.
This is from the CDC. Overall, like I said, maternal mortality rates
Mm,
increased from 23.3 deaths per 100,000 live births in 2018 to
mhm,
32.6 deaths per
mhm,
100,000.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so they're saying an age-adjusted increase of about 27%. So
Mhm.
basically, we're having higher rates, and Black and brown women are impacted the most.
Yes. Yes. As is always the case, the most marginalized people are always affected
Mhm.
the most. Um, and another thing I just want to mention really quick is
Yeah.
creating incentives at workplaces to provide on-site childcare facilities
Mhm.
for their workers. As somebody who worked at a school that started at infant, by my last year there, we started at infant, and that was huge, especially for our own working moms. And also a consideration is providing fertility benefits in your health insurance, because like you and I talked about, that's
Mhm.
often not included. Um, and then proper pumping accommodations, which again, working in a school, I saw that. And I even saw, I mean, it was sometimes we had to work hard to find a good space. um, but but making sure that women have that access and families have that access and children have that access as infants is so
Yes.
important. And then I have something that I want to bring up. The number one cause of death among pregnant women is murder.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And so it's like, what are we doing about that? Which there was somebody who a woman who put out a post recently that that's what she was studying at the NIH was
Mm.
essentially that, and it was cut. So I'm hoping it's under that whole umbrella of the at the NIH, the woman study, but I don't know. So
No.
um
So gender-based violence,
yeah, addressing
domestic
gender-based
violence.
violence. Mhm.
Mhm. Well, we've covered a lot.
We have.
We threw down a lot of
That was
stats.
heavy.
It was heavy.
It was heavy.
Shout out to Park City,
Yeah.
Utah, doing their thing, taking matters into their own hands and supporting their community. And the tools for your toolbox for
Yeah.
this episode
Yeah.
is to really look into and listen, just do a little bit of research for those in your
Mhm.
local politics.
Yeah.
I know that in New York City, we have our mayoral campaigns happening. We're going
Mhm.
to be electing a new mayor in
Yes.
many cities. There will be. So look at your city, look at who's running and what are they running for,
Mhm.
right? What are they running on? And start
Yeah.
there. Just
Yeah.
do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it. I think we gave a lot. And I hope I think we gave a lot to chew on and consider. And yeah, I hope that through this conversation kind of really identified some really important talking points to take away, and again, going back to having these conversations with the people around you first, and like you said, thinking of your local government. I hope that we've broken down the issue some, and given people something to think about and consider and talk about in their own lives,
Mhm.
and maybe to push forward in their own world of why some of these things seem so basic, but like childcare at work.
Right.
Um,
Well, y'all, thank you for listening. Episode 3. Hope you
episode
learned
3,
something. Hope it's been informative.
we learned something.
We sure did.
We learned
We
something. We're learning with you for sure.
exactly, exactly.
All right. Well,
Well,
thank you,
it
Dahlia.
thank you, Allie. Thank you to our listeners, to our community. Thanks for listening. And if you like our content, please like, share, and subscribe. Till next
Woo!
time.
See ya.